Ukraine ceasefire, just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia, and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also.
At first glance, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, looks like a simple man with his olive green shirts and overall modest appearance. But here's where things get complicated. Recent reports claim Zelensky's net worth is now in the billions. And for a president whose nation is war-torn and whose government relies heavily on financial aid from the U.S.,
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone.
That raises some tough questions. How does a leader of a devastated country get such wealth? Is there more to this situation that the world is not aware of? Stick around, because what we're about to reveal is sure to blow your mind.
It is an important development in the Ukraine war because President Zelensky has said that Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table.
President Zelensky's early life and career. Before we get into the details about President Zelensky's financial status, we need to first get a backstory on how he came to be president in the first place. Volodymyr Zelensky was born on January 25, 1978, in Kryvyi Rih, a city in central Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union at the time. His family was of Jewish heritage, and his father, Alexander Zelensky, worked as a professor and head of the cybernetics and computing hardware department at the Kryvyi Rih Institute of Economics. His mother, Rima Zelenska, was an engineer. Zelensky's early years were shaped by the influence of his hardworking parents, who emphasized education and ambition. Kryvyi Rih was a heavily industrial city known for its mining and steel production. So growing up, Zelensky was surrounded by a tough, working-class environment. Strangely enough, Zelensky didn't have the kind of childhood that would make anyone think he was destined for politics or even fame. His family wasn't rich, and his hometown wasn't glamorous. Kryvyi Rih was a gritty city filled with factories, and the air often smelled of metal and smoke. Yet within this rough setting, young Zelensky had a bright personality. He was funny, clever, and loved making people laugh. His teachers remembered him not only as a good student, but also as someone who could light up a room with his humor. When Zelensky was young, his family moved briefly to Erdenet, Mongolia, where his father worked for a few years. During this time, Zelensky attended school in Mongolia, picking up some basic Mongolian, but continuing to speak Russian at home. It was a strange experience for him, especially being in a foreign country, surrounded by a new culture, yet still feeling connected to his roots. At the age of 8, his family returned to Kryvyi Rih, where he resumed his studies. Despite the challenges of moving between countries, he showed an early talent for performing and entertaining others. His teachers recalled him as a bright and energetic student who loved the stage. Zelensky attended Kryvyi Rih Economic Institute, a branch of Kyiv National Economic University, where he earned a law degree in 1997. Interestingly, despite studying law, Zelensky never pursued a career as a lawyer. Instead, his heart was drawn to entertainment, a passion he had discovered during his teenage years. Even while in university, he actively participated in comedy competitions, laying the groundwork for his future in show business. In the early 1990s, Ukraine was experiencing huge political and economic turmoil following the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was a challenging time, but for Zelensky, that wasn't the case. To him, this was the perfect time for him to explore his creative interests. At the age of 17, he joined a local comedy team that performed as part of the popular Russian-language comedy competition show, KVN, which stands for the Club of the Funny and Inventive. KVN was a huge phenomenon across post-Soviet countries, blending humor, skits, and improvisation, and it gave Zelensky his first taste of national fame. Zelensky wasn't just another team member, he quickly stood out. His quick thinking, sharp wit, and natural charisma made him a fan favorite. People laughed at his jokes, not only because they were funny, but because they often poked fun at real-life issues, from everyday struggles to political absurdities. This was Zelensky's first experience using comedy as a way to talk about serious topics. By 1997, Zelensky had founded his own comedy troupe called Wartime 95, named after the neighborhood where he grew up. The group quickly gained popularity, performing in various KVN contests and eventually making it to the show's major league. Zelensky became known for his sharp wit, quick thinking, and charismatic stage presence. His humor often poked fun at politics, daily struggles, and life in post-Soviet Ukraine, which made the audiences a huge fan of his work. But Zelensky wasn't just a comedian, he was a creator. In 2003, Kvartal 95 started producing their own TV shows, and Zelensky took on roles not just as a performer, but also as a writer and producer. The group's programs gained national recognition, and by the mid-2000s, they were among the most popular comedy shows in Ukraine. Their content was lighthearted, yet clever, often touching on political and social issues in a way that entertained rather than offended. Then Zelensky's big break finally happened in 2015. The main reason for this big break was the launch of the TV series Servant of the People. In the show, Zelensky played Vasyl Holoborodko, a humble high school history teacher who unexpectedly becomes the president of Ukraine after a viral video captures him ranting about government corruption. The show struck a chord with viewers as it mirrored real frustrations many Ukrainians felt about their leaders. Zelensky's character was honest, ordinary, and determined to fight corruption, which was an image the public loved. It was more than just a TV show. It became a symbol. Ukrainians saw themselves in Holoborodko. They were tired of corrupt politicians and broken promises. They longed for someone who wasn't part of the political elite, someone who understood their struggles. And Zelensky, through his character, gave them hope. The lines between fiction and reality began to blur as people started wondering, what if someone like Vasyl Holoborodko could be president in real life? In a twist that felt straight out of a movie script, this idea soon turned into reality. By 2018, as Ukraine continued to struggle with corruption scandals and economic struggles, Zelensky made a bold move. On December 31st, 2018, during his New Year's Eve address on television, he announced his candidacy for the 2019 Ukrainian presidential election. His decision shocked many, but others saw it as the logical next step for a man who had spent years using humor to highlight the nation's political problems. Though Zelensky had no formal political experience, his campaign was unconventional but effective. He leveraged his celebrity status, social media, and his show's popularity to connect directly with voters. Kvartal 95 played a huge role in crafting his public image as it blurred the lines between the character of Vasyl Holoborodko and the real-life Volodymyr Zelensky. His message was simple: fight corruption, bring honesty to politics, and unite the people of Ukraine. Zelensky didn't use the traditional methods politicians did. He didn't have grand rallies or long-winded speeches. Instead, he used humor and social media to spread his message. He connected with young voters who felt ignored by the political system. His campaign was fresh, modern, and relatable. In the first round of elections in March 2019, Zelensky won 30.2% of the vote, far ahead of the incumbent president, Petro Poroshenko. By the time of the runoff in April 2019, he secured a landslide victory with 73.2% of the vote. This was a clear sign that Ukrainians were ready for something new. They weren't just voting for Zelensky, they were voting for change, hope, and a break from the past. Zelensky's journey from a comedian to the highest political office in the country was unprecedented. His early life in Kryvyi Rih, his passion for comedy, and his rise through television all shaped the leader he would become. Though some critics dismissed him as an entertainer playing politics, others saw in him a fresh start, a break from the old ways of governing. His presidency would soon be tested by real-life challenges far greater than anything scripted for television, but his early life and career laid the foundation for his bold and unexpected rise to power. What makes Zelensky's story so fascinating is how unpredictable it was. He wasn't born into a political family. He didn't climb the ranks of government. He didn't have years of experience in parliament. He was an ordinary man with extraordinary dreams, someone who dared to believe that he could make a difference. And in the eyes of millions of Ukrainians, that was exactly what they needed. While many people consider Zelensky an incredible president, others believe that he has certain controversies surrounding him. In fact, one of the most talked about controversies is the rumors about his properties. Stay tuned to find out what these rumors are. Rumors about Zelensky's properties. Zelensky has been the subject of many rumors and speculations about his personal wealth and property holdings. These rumors did not just appear out of nowhere. They grew louder over time, especially as his political career gained momentum. Like we already mentioned earlier, before he became president, Zelensky was already a well-known figure in Ukraine, and he was famous for his work in comedy and television. This meant he had a sizable amount of money to his name, but despite that, Zelensky is often seen wearing military-style clothing, like olive green t-shirts and cargo pants, and working from modest settings, which contributes to the impression that he lives humbly or even like he's broke. But once he stepped into politics, many people started to look deeper into his personal life, including his finances. Suddenly, questions about his properties, bank accounts, and offshore companies became a topic of public debate. The biggest wave of rumors came in October 2021, when the Pandora Papers were released.
Before Volodymyr Zelensky was elected president, there is no indication in these papers that this money...
The Pandora Papers were a huge leak of financial documents that exposed secret offshore deals and hidden wealth of powerful people from all over the world. These papers revealed that Zelensky and some of his close friends and business partners were linked to a network of offshore companies. This network was set up years before Zelensky became president, back when he was still focused on his entertainment career. According to the documents, these offshore companies were registered in places like the British Virgin Islands, Belize, and Cyprus, which are countries known for their lenient financial laws and secrecy. One of the most discussed details from the Pandora Papers was the claim that one of these offshore companies, called Maltex Multicapital Corp, was used to buy luxury properties in London, United Kingdom. The documents suggested that these properties were worth millions of dollars. Zelensky himself was reportedly connected to Maltex until 2019, which was the same year he won the presidential election. Just before he became president, Zelensky allegedly transferred his shares in the company to his close friend and business partner, Serhiy Shafir. This move raised eyebrows, with some critics wondering if it was an attempt to distance himself from the offshore dealings right before stepping into public office. Things don't end there. Apart from the offshore properties, there have also been claims about Zelensky's real estate holdings in Ukraine. Some reports allege that he owns multiple luxury apartments and houses across the country. According to Zelensky's official asset declarations, he and his wife, Olena Zelenska, indeed own some properties in Ukraine. These include an apartment in Kyiv and a few other real estate assets, but there is no verified evidence showing that Zelensky secretly owns a large number of luxury homes or hidden estates beyond what he has publicly declared. Despite this, the rumors continued. Critics have pointed to the fact that Zelensky's entertainment career was quite profitable. Kvartal 95 was a massive success, producing not only comedy shows but also movies, live performances, and television series. This led some to believe that Zelensky may have earned more money than he publicly admits. Some opponents claim that his wealth is far greater than what is listed in his official financial declarations. Another aspect to these rumors is the suggestion that Zelensky has large sums of money stored in foreign bank accounts. Some unverified reports have claimed that he has millions or even billions of dollars hidden overseas, but these claims often lack solid proof. What is clear is that Zelensky's involvement with offshore companies was confirmed by the Pandora Papers, but no direct evidence has shown that he used these companies to illegally hide money or evade taxes. When the Pandora Papers story broke, Zelensky and his team responded quickly. His office released a statement explaining that the offshore companies were originally set up to protect the finances of Kvartal 95 from what they called the aggressive actions of former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych's regime. At the time, Zelensky and his business partners feared that their assets could be seized, so they used offshore firms to keep their income safe. They insisted that these companies were not created to avoid taxes or hide money, but to protect their business from political threats. Public reaction to these revelations was mixed. Some of Zelensky's supporters believed his explanation, saying that Ukraine's corrupt political climate at the time justified his use of offshore structures. They argued that many Ukrainian business people used similar tactics to protect themselves from government interference. To them, Zelensky was still a symbol of change, as he were a president who, despite his offshore dealings, was still fighting for a more transparent and honest Ukraine. But his critics saw things differently. They argued that Zelensky's offshore network contradicted the very message he campaigned on. Zelensky had promised to fight corruption, bring transparency to the government, and hold the rich and powerful accountable. So when news broke that he himself had offshore companies tied to luxury properties, many accused him of hypocrisy. His opponents used this scandal to question his integrity and paint him as just another politician using his position for personal gain. The rumors didn't stop there. Some conspiracy theories began to emerge, claiming that Zelensky's wealth was far greater than anyone realized. Social media was filled with unverified reports suggesting he secretly owned mansions in various countries, including Italy, France, and the United States. These claims were never backed by evidence, but they fueled further distrust among his critics. One particular rumor that spread widely was the idea that Zelensky had billions of dollars hidden in secret accounts, which was money that allegedly came from shadowy business deals or even foreign sponsors. Again, no credible evidence has ever confirmed these claims. Still, the rumors found traction, especially among those already skeptical of Zelensky's presidency. It is also worth noting that Zelensky's financial disclosures, required by Ukrainian law, have consistently shown a relatively modest level of wealth for someone who was a famous entertainer and now a head of state. His reported assets include his real estate in Ukraine, shares in Vartel 95, and some savings, but nothing that hints at the huge fortunes his critics claim he has. As Zelensky continues to lead Ukraine through some of its most challenging times, including the ongoing war with Russia, these financial rumors remain part of the complicated narrative surrounding him. The war between Ukraine and Russia has become one of the most devastating conflicts in recent history, not just in terms of human lives, but also financially. It has pushed Ukraine's economy into a deep crisis, making it almost impossible for the country to stand on its own without outside help. Before the war, Ukraine's economy was already struggling. The country relied heavily on industries like agriculture. In fact, Ukraine is often called the breadbasket of Europe because of its huge wheat and grain production. It also depended on manufacturing, mining, and steel exports. In 2021, Ukraine's gross domestic product, also known as its GDP, was about $200 billion. That may sound like a lot, but compared to larger economies, it was relatively small. The country was still recovering from years of corruption, weak foreign investment, and the effects of the 2014 Crimea crisis. When Russian tanks rolled across the border in early 2022, the damage was immediate and severe. Businesses shut down, factories stopped working, and farmlands turned into battlefields. Ports along the Black Sea, which was important for exporting grain, were blocked by Russian forces, cutting off a key source of income. By March 2022, Ukraine's economy was shrinking fast. Inflation soared, and the value of Ukraine's currency, the hryvnia, dropped. One of the hardest hit sectors was agriculture. Ukraine produced about 10% of the world's wheat before the war. Countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia depended on these exports. But with Russia blocking ports like Mariupol and Odessa, millions of tons of grain couldn't leave the country. This didn't just hurt Ukraine's economy, it created a global food crisis, driving up prices everywhere. Factories and industries also suffered. Steel production, which was once a major contributor to Ukraine's economy, collapsed as plants were damaged or taken over by Russian troops. The famous Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol, for example, became a battleground, and its operations came to a halt. With these economic pillars crumbling, Ukraine's government struggled to pay for basic services like healthcare, education, and public sector wages. The war forced the Ukrainian government to spend billions on its military. Weapons, equipment, and soldier salaries drained the national budget. According to estimates from the Ukrainian Ministry of Finance, military spending jumped from $6 billion in 2021 to over $30 billion in 2022. This was money Ukraine simply didn't have. As the war dragged on, Ukraine's financial crisis only became worse. By mid-2022, the country faced a budget deficit of about $5 billion every month. To make matters worse, millions of Ukrainians fled the country, which reduced the workforce and weakened the economy even more. The United Nations reported that by the end of 2022, around 8 million Ukrainians had become refugees. Faced with this dire situation, President Zelensky had no choice but to seek financial help from other countries. One of his most crucial allies was the United States. From the start of the war, the U.S. had condemned Russia's invasion and pledged support to Ukraine both militarily and financially. As billions of dollars in aid have poured into Ukraine to support its defense efforts, some skeptics have raised concerns about how these funds are being managed and whether any of them have indirectly benefited the president or those close to him. Is there any truth to these speculations? Keep watching, because what you're about to discover will shock you to your core. Speculations about Zelensky's financial ties to war funds from the United States. Apart from the rumors about his properties, one of the most controversial topics surrounding Zelensky today is the speculation about his financial ties to the war funds pouring into Ukraine from the United States. The U.S. has sent billions of dollars in aid since the war began, which was a staggering amount meant to help Ukraine defend itself, support its people, and keep its economy from collapsing under the weight of war. However, somewhere along the way, whispers began to spread. Was all the money truly going where it was supposed to go? And more importantly, was Zelensky himself gaining anything from it? These rumors didn't start out of nowhere. In early 2025, Zelensky made a surprising statement. Out of the $175 billion that the U.S. had pledged to support Ukraine, he revealed that only $77 billion had actually been received by his government. The moment those words left his mouth, the world erupted with questions. Where was the rest of the money? Who was handling it? Why wasn't Ukraine seeing the full amount? Critics both inside and outside of Ukraine pounced on this revelation. Opposition politicians within Ukraine accused Zelensky's government of being careless with international funds. They asked if corruption, which was something Ukraine has long struggled with, had found its way into the heart of the war effort. Meanwhile, things were also happening on the international stage. Zelensky's international critics wondered whether all the aid money was being properly tracked, or if some of it was slipping into the wrong hands, or maybe even into the pockets of powerful people, including the president himself. To understand why these speculations gained so much traction, it's important to look at how U.S. war funds are actually distributed. Contrary to what some people believe, the billions of dollars in aid don't all go straight to Zelensky's office or the Ukrainian government's bank account. The money is divided into different categories. A portion goes directly to the Ukrainian government, which is for salaries of public servants, keeping hospitals running, and maintaining basic infrastructure. Another chunk is strictly for military support, like purchasing weapons, training soldiers, and gathering intelligence. Some funds are routed through international organizations to provide food, medicine, and shelter for the millions of Ukrainians displaced by the war. And then there's the part that stays with the U.S. government, used to pay for the weapons and equipment they send over, or to fund American military operations supporting Ukraine from afar. So, when Zelensky said that only $75 billion had reached his government, it didn't mean the rest was stolen. It meant a lot of it never actually passed through Ukraine's hands. But to many people, especially those who didn't understand the complex way aid works, it sounded like something suspicious was going on. Then the speculations grew louder. Some claim that Zelensky and his inner circle might be profiting from the war and using the chaos as a cover to funnel money into private accounts or invest in secret properties. Others pointed to his past in the entertainment industry, suggesting that a man who once lived in the world of show business might still be playing a role, and this time, as a humble wartime leader, while secretly enriching himself. Rumors went around about luxury properties allegedly linked to Zelensky, including claims that he or his family owned million-dollar villas in places like Italy and Switzerland. There were accusations that money from U.S. war funds was somehow making its way into offshore accounts, which were accounts that Zelensky denied ever having. Some critics even pushed the idea that he was using the war as a distraction, allowing him to quietly build his personal wealth while the world was too busy watching the battles happen. The internet, of course, played its part in spreading these theories. Social media was flooded with claims, some baseless and others drawing on fragments of truth about Zelensky's supposed financial ties to the war funds. There were whispers of luxurious villas in Europe, hidden bank accounts, and secret business deals. Memes showed Zelensky living lavishly while his people suffered, fueling outrage among those already skeptical of his leadership. What made the situation worse was that misinformation spread faster than the truth. A photo of a mansion in a wealthy Italian neighborhood circulated online, with bold captions claiming it belonged to Zelensky. In reality, the property had no connection to him, but by the time fact-checkers debunked the story, the damage was already done. Another rumor suggested Zelensky's wife had gone on a secret shopping spree in Paris using war money. Again, this was false, but the accusation stuck in people's minds. Zelensky didn't stay silent in the face of these rumors. He repeatedly emphasized his commitment to transparency, inviting international organizations to audit Ukraine's use of foreign aid. He pushed for new anti-corruption measures, determined to prove that every dollar sent to Ukraine was being used for its intended purpose. He reminded the world that much of the aid money never touched Ukrainian soil, which was a detail many overlooked in the frenzy of speculation. He also went on national television, addressing the rumors head-on. He once said in a broadcast that this war was not a game. He added that every cent, every dollar, every piece of aid is a lifeline for the Ukrainian people. He also emphasized that to suggest that he or anyone in his government would take from that lifeline was not just wrong, it was cruel. But the damage was done. His opponents in Ukraine used the rumors as a political weapon, accusing him of being a hypocrite who was someone who spoke about fighting for the people while allegedly benefiting from the war behind the scenes. Even some international allies began to raise their eyebrows, pressing for more accountability before approving future aid packages. What made the situation even trickier was the sheer scale of the aid involved. When billions of dollars move across borders during wartime, the lines of accountability can easily blur. There are so many moving parts, including but not limited to governments, charities, military contractors, that tracking every cent becomes a monumental task. Mistakes happen, delays occur, and miscommunication is almost inevitable. But to an already suspicious public, these complexities usually look like cover-ups. The U.S. government also faced pressure to explain how the aid money was being handled. American politicians who were already skeptical about sending so much money overseas began using these rumors to push for stricter oversight. Some even suggested halting further aid until there was undeniable proof that not a single dollar was being misused, which was a move that worried Zelensky, since Ukraine relied heavily on this financial support. Zelensky's supporters, however, stand firmly by him. They see him as a leader fighting for his country's survival.
To save our country, our values, our freedom.
Doing his best in a situation most people could never imagine. They argue that the rumors about his financial ties to war funds are nothing more than politically motivated attacks, which was a way to discredit a man who has become a symbol of resistance. To them, Zelensky is a hero, and the idea that he would exploit his nation's suffering for personal gain is absurd. At the center of this controversy was a much bigger issue, which was the struggle to balance transparency with the reality of war. Zelensky knows that winning the war isn't just about defeating Russian forces, it's also about maintaining the trust of his people and his allies. If faith in his leadership crumbles, so does the international support Ukraine desperately needs. That's why the rumors about his financial ties to U.S. war funds matter so much. They're not just about money, they're about trust. Trust in Zelensky, trust in Ukraine's government, and trust in the global effort to support a nation under siege. For now, the speculations continue, but so does Zelensky's fight both on the battlefield and in the court of public opinion. Whether history will remember him as a wartime hero or a leader tainted by controversy remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the story of Volodymyr Zelensky is far from over. Well, what do you think about Zelensky's financial lifestyle? Do you believe that he is siphoning war funds from the United States? Let us know in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.